The Toni Tennille Show, show number 64-80, VTR 102980, Air TBA.
Linda, you're starring in a new movie about a very warm and wonderful lady by the name of Joy Euphema.
Yes.
And she was one of the first nurses to deal exclusively with patients who were dying.
Yes.
Now, in this scene, one of Joy's patients has just died, and Linda, as Joy, is discussing the situation with another patient. Watch it.
Mrs. Norris? You know, I don't think too much of her, Doctor.
It's called denial. Don't talk about it. Don't face up to it. So the dying person is even more isolated. There's a study in the current nursing journal. Somebody figured out that it takes a nurse twice as long to answer a call from a dying patient. Doctors don't want to tell you what you've got. Nurses don't want to help you if you've got it.
There are people, and people do that.
It's wrong.
You were with her?
I could have been anywhere. I could have been at the other end of the hall.
Aye. You want a beer?
The movie is called A Matter of Life and Death. And Linda, tell us about Joy Euphema.
First, I want to say that was J. Pat O'Malley.
Wonderful.
Isn't he?
Yes, he is indeed.
Well, he so moves me. That's a wonderful clip because it does tell so much about what the movie's about. Joy Euphema is a woman, one of the bravest women I've ever known about. I saw her first on 60 Minutes. She was interviewed on 60 Minutes. Because what she does is she goes into the rooms in a hospital. She started out in urology. She was the head nurse on urology. What happened was she began to see that people who were critically ill and dying were not being cared for. They were being given good medical care.
Yeah.
But as this clip points out, nurses, it takes them twice as long to answer the call when we are dying. We don't want to deal with death. None of us want to deal with death, with the fact that we're all going to die whenever. And there is good medical care, and there are all kinds of machines, and all kinds of money is spent in hospitals to give all kinds of chemicals. But what was really missing was a person, and a nurse in this case, to go into a room and sit down on the bed, which a patient always says yes to, no matter how sick they are. Hello, I'm Joy. May I sit with you? Yes. I'm a special nurse. I deal with people who are critically ill. Would you like to talk about your illness? What she found out in over 500 patients that she worked with over 5 years was that everybody wants to talk. Nobody wants to be alone. And what happens to us when we're dying is, because we all react to death with such fear, we are left alone.
Exactly.
Families don't want to talk about it. Doctors don't want to admit it's happening. Nurses are afraid to deal with it, are afraid to be emotional, are afraid to feel something. This woman is not afraid to feel something, Joy Euphema. She knows that the contact between us is what counts, that it's important for us to touch each other and say, this is scary, isn't it? What can I do for you? What do you want? Nobody asks us, what do you want? Sometimes the answer is a beer, a pizza. I want to go home. So this was a chance. I saw this woman on 60 Minutes, and I saw her in a dialogue with a woman named Martha Diller, who since died. And I got to meet Martha because I met Joy, called her on the phone, said, I want to do your story. She was working in a hospital in Pennsylvania. I went and spent 5 days with her, made rounds with her, went into those rooms with her, where the patients were critically ill and dying. And I spent 5 days with her at her home. And we talked, and I listened, and I taped a lot of what she had to say. And she has a great deal to say. Her experiences are extraordinary because she takes chances.
Right.
Because she doesn't close a door on herself. She says, yes, this is hard. Yes, this is scary. But what do we have to lose? We're human beings.
How did
Let's
the
talk
medical
to each
profession
other.
react to what she was doing?
Well, it's what drew me to do the picture, because I like to do stories about women who take chances, and for some reasons I'm connected to women who are mavericks and who get into trouble, and I think those are the most important stories, heroic women. So what happened was that she came up against a lot of adversity in the hospital. Doctors didn't want her meddling, felt that she was opening up a can of worms they didn't want to deal with.
What kind of a can of worms could it be? Why would they call it that?
Well, they're afraid that people don't really want to know. And so...
That they're dying, you mean?
Yes. Doctors are afraid because see, doctors aren't trained. Joy Eufema is trained in how to work with us when we are dying.
Right.
Doctors, there's no course in medical schools that prepares a doctor as well as they are prepared, technically in every other way, to deal with death.
That's a failure for them.
So death becomes a failure,
Yes.
exactly. Death becomes something it's better not to talk about because it means we didn't succeed. The failure, and she has a scene with a doctor in the picture, and he says, you know, it's as hard for us to deal with death as it is anybody else because we perceive it as a failure. She says, the failure is in not talking about it.
Yeah.
The failure is in denying it. That word denial is an operative word. If we just pretend it's not here, it will go away. Well, yeah, it will go away. We'll all die, and nobody will have known how we felt about it. And so we won't learn from each other.
Exactly.
See, there is a ritual in death as much as there is a ritual in birth and in marriage and in other cultures. Death is very much a part of life. There are cultures where a woman who is dying will prepare a feast for her friends and her family, and on the day that she perceives will be her death or that weekend. And so there is a togetherness about that event so that everybody is a part of it. Joy Eufema believes, and I have come to believe this, in the cycle of life, that our children should be connected with our grandparents, that we should take care of us, that nobody should go to a nursing home, that we should bring our parents home, that we can live together, that our children should know about death. Because indeed it's going to happen to all of
everybody.
us. There's nobody that gets away without it.
Why are people afraid to even say the word? And so many people are. They'll say he passed on, or he did this, that, and the other. Never, they died.
Why do you think?
I don't know. I'm asking you. From talking with Joy, did you get any feelings from her about it?
I think the fact is that until we come to terms with the inevitability of our own death, and that's very hard to do.
Definitely.
We all want to live forever, and we all believe that we will live forever. In coming to terms with the fact that we are going to die sometime, we then have to say, so what do I want to do with my life now? So then I better start making some choices and having a good life while I'm here.
Right.
If we don't come to terms with that, then we can sort of fritter off, drift around, and pretend that that's not going to happen. And so we call it by prettier names. We use euphemisms in order, again, to deny that it's going to happen. And it's too bad because we miss out on a lot. This is a very uplifting movie.
Absolutely.
This is a very hopeful picture. It's really about life, and it's a very exciting movie. I'm looking forward to all of you watching it and to your feedback and to knowing that you learned as much from it as I did.
We'll be back with more from Linda. Been talking with Linda Lavin about her movie about
Matter of Life and Death.
Matter of Life and Death. And I was asking Linda in the break here, How can you get a project like that off the ground? She said she was watching 60 Minutes, and she saw the story of Joy Eufema, and she thought, must make a film of this.
Yes.
How do you do something like, first you find out if you can get the rights, is that
First
it?
you worry a lot about if you have indeed the courage to call this person and say, hello, I'm Linda Lavin, and I'd like to do a film about you and your work. And it took me about 3 weeks to get the courage to call her.
Really?
I figured that somebody else already had it. It was such a powerful movie, I figured I was probably too late. I've never had done this before. This is
yeah, I was
the
wondering
first
something you
time.
did all the time.
Oh, no, I've never done this before. I've been in 2 films up till now that have been sent to me, scripts that have been sent to me. But, okay, it was time to do that. So I fretted and worried, and finally I picked up the phone.
Why were you afraid to call her?
I was afraid she'd say no.
Oh,
or
that was
I
it.
was afraid she'd say, Jane Fonda already has it.
Oh, I
and
see.
Forget
Okay.
you. I finally decided that she might say no, and I'd probably live through that.
You'd live through it.
And so I called her up, and she answered the phone with a very soft voice. I said, I first called the hospital, and they gave me her home number, and that's a no-no. So she answers the phone very calmly, because she often hears from people who are in stress.
Right.
Hello. So I said, hello, this is, and I start my spiel on who I am. And she's not talking, she's listening. So the more she's not talking, the more nervous I am now, because she didn't jump right in and say, hey, you're wonderful, and of course you can do the movie. And I'm now, flop sweat is all over my face. I'm sitting here thinking, no, this is never gonna work. She's very quiet, and I have now said, I'm very moved by you, I'm very excited by your story, and I wondered if you'd be interested in talking with me about my possibly doing your film. And there's this silence. And I thought, God, I never should have done this. And she says, is this really you, Linda? I said, yes, it is. What, you mean you know me? See, what you forget when you're in this tunnel, in this studio all the time, is that indeed there are people out there watching you.
Yes, indeed.
So she said, you know how much it means to me, she said, with the work that I do, to come home on Sunday nights and get to watch Alice and get to laugh. So then I remembered that I did indeed provide a service, and that was real important for me. So yes, she said she'd be very interested, and was I really serious? And then she was as scared as I was, and then that was terrific. So I said, I'd like to come and see you, and could I do that, and could I spend some time with you? And she said, when can you come? She's a very warm and very lovely person, and all of which I got from the 60 Minutes piece. And I went to visit her subsequently. A couple of months later,
Yeah.
I had 5 days, and I went and spent those days with her. I've met her the first day. I spent the first night that I got there in a motel, and she came and picked me up. It was right across from the hospital. Went to the hospital, put a white coat on me, and said, let's go. And I walked into those rooms with her and sat down on the bed. She left me in one room to talk to a patient. And she said, I have to go do something, and she left me with him. And I learned what it's about. It's about being a human being.
Yes.
I didn't have to know anything. He wanted to talk, and he wanted to be silent, and he wanted some company, and she's highly skilled. It's not just about hanging around. I mean, there's a skill here, and she's developed it. But she's an enormously compassionate human being. So we spent these 5 days together, and she showed me around. She's built her own home with her own hands, raised the beams herself. She's an extraordinary person.
Did you then approach
Thank you, I've lost track. I then came back home to Los Angeles and took the script to Lorimer's
Now,
studio
who did
here.
The script?
The script was done by a man named Lane Slade.
So you hired someone to do the script then?
Yes, then what you do is you take the script to the studio, and and then the network says, yes, we'd like to do this, which is already very exciting because you're not sure if they want to tackle the subject.
Right.
And yes, of course they are, because television, being what it is a medium that we can reach out and say,
yes,
hey, let's talk about this. So then you get a writer. You read scripts and you say, this is a good writer, let's try this writer. So it took 2 years, and we got a really fine script. And it takes that long sometimes to get the story you want, because I wanted it to be about the personal journey of this woman, who she was, what she came from, and how she came to this, because this was not an easy journey for her. She didn't just jump into this. She wasn't doing all that well in her early part of her life. And so you get to see that, and you get to see how she fought for what she believed was the essence, the dignity of the patient.
Right.
If indeed somebody wants to go home and the doctor says no, she gets that woman on a trolley and into the ambulance and home. She goes out at midnight and gets that patient a pizza. She is the advocate for the patient. She intercedes between the doctor and works with the family and the patient. Now, she won't be involved in a custody fight between the doctor and the patient.
Right.
She won't do that. She won't make trouble so that the patient is uncomfortable. She works
cares
for what
about
the patient wants.
The patient first.
What she found out was that nobody asks us what we want. So once she finds out, she goes to the limit to get that person what they want.
Well, the wonderful thing about our medium, and we often put it down, and a lot of people say, oh, television is nothing, but television is wonderful when people like you use it the way it should be used, and we thank you very much,
Thank
Linda
you,
Lavin.
Toni.